the unglamorous side of working on old cars, scrap fenders and doors and junk, and all that has to be loaded up and carried to the scrap yard. Now, there was a time when a load like that makes the back of the truck squat would bring you $50, $75 and almost make it worth it. In today's market, the way scrap is, be lucky if that pays for the gas it took to haul it off. But at the end of the day, you can't have all this stuff just constantly laying around. It's part of the nature of the job.
I'd say it's a nut job.
So the idea is to drive across the scale, you get weighed, loaded, then you come out here and you try to do it without ripping the sides off of your vehicle, and you pick a spot and unload your mess. And after you do that, you drive across the scale again. Now that you got it unloaded in a pile, you drive back across the scale. That way your vehicle empty, and you get paid based off the weight difference. Look at all the cars. So for the curious minded, that was right at 1,000 pounds. I think I was 980 pounds, 990 pounds, somewhere in there. So we was right at 1,000 pounds, and it brought $52. So there you go. Scrap is not bringing much money, but this is more one of those things you clean out your pile and clean up your spot a little bit. I'm not scrapping for a living, so it's not like I'm dependent upon that little paycheck to keep me going, because if I was, scrapping would be a hard way to make a living. That was just about cleaning up my pile and from all the little projects and junk parts and everything, and I'll throw them in a pile, and when I get about a truck bed full, I'll haul them off. And it's usually so long in between for me that it's way different on price every time. But there you go, cleaned up a little scrap pile, and basically with the price today, maybe got a full tank of gas out of it, and say Bojangles biscuit. So don't look at it, scrapping is a way to make a living. At least you better have a better outlet than I do for metal. But it will it's worth not just throwing it in the dumpster. It's worth hanging on to it till you get a little pile, and then you can put your little pile together and at least get your biscuit money out of it, you know what I mean? So I know some people may have never hauled a load of scrap, but that's basically as simple as that. All right, we got to get these cam bearings installed in this motor. This engine is actually going to Florida, and it needs to leave here in 2 days, I believe, if my math is right. What day is this? This is Tuesday. I need to have it in Florida Friday. So yeah, it's headed out of here. If you've never put cam bearings into a engine before, First off, you have to have a special tool to do it with, which is this tool. It has like a rubber expandable, think of a big rubber band right here that expands out when you tighten this up and clamps tight onto the cam bearing and holds it in place while you drive it through the hole. Cam bearings are specific to the hole. When you get a box of cam bearings, on the lid it has a order that they go in. I pretty much use King bearings exclusively, but when it comes to cam bearings, I will let you in on a trade secret. When it comes to cam bearings, a large majority of the cam bearings you get are all made by Durabond. They're just reboxed with somebody else's box. So when I use King cam bearings, I am using a Durabond. So even though the majority of the time everything you see bearing wise in here is always going to have a King label on it, you will see from time to time an actual box that says Durabond on it for cam bearings, and it's just because of what I get my hands on at the time. Slide into the slot. I'll show you in a second that they have a certain orientation that they have to go in, and you got to get that lined up just right. And then give them a little love tap. And always double check to make sure they're in the right spot. I have a tool I've made that slides down through the oil hole in the mains and will drop down through the oil hole in the cam bearing to show me that they're lined up correctly. All right. Now, as I was saying, they have, the front one has two in it. All the rest of them just have one. It's where the oil comes through to oil the cam. They are also directional. If you can see, if I can show it on the camera, one end of it has a real taper to it and the other end doesn't. It's more blunt. This is more sharp and tapered on this end. It does matter which way they go. Well, honestly, it probably doesn't matter, but they say it matters. So as long as they say it matters to me. Slide it on a little tool. There's a little tighten there to crank down on it a little bit. This front one's a little different. The tool has a guide that guides it by locating off the front one, and then as you go in there. But the front one's a little different. You've got no guide out here. You just kind of got to look and eyeball it. Cam bearings are installed. Main bearings, and then we'll drop the cam in. The cam. Listen to me. We're going to drop the crank in and start assembling this motor. At least assembling this short block. This is just going to be a short block. Again, this one's going to Florida for a well-known client, but I'm not going to say who it's for because I'm not sure if they want the world to know it or not, what they're doing or not. But this is for somebody that you've all seen on the TV. I'll just measure your in play. Now, I know most people get on the very end of the snout down there. I understand that. But I'm missing my little arm and I can't figure out where I got it laying here. So I'm going to zero it right here on the shoulder. And that will give me a pretty good indication of what I'm doing. So now, here. Double check. I always do it 3 or 4 times just to verify my numbers. Okay. Now, just so everybody knows what I'm doing, I'm going to look up the spec and then I'm going to show you what this is. And that way you understand what's going on here. Basically, the end play is how much the crankshaft can move fore and aft. Okay, right here is what I've got. It should measure between 4 and 6. We're on 5. I checked it 3 times. It came out to 5 every time, which you couldn't. Sorry, I hit it with my hand. Which you couldn't ask for any better than that. Not gonna lie about it. It don't always work that way. But this time, this one just wants to be happy. And this one is dead nuts in the center of the spec. You couldn't ask for more than that. I got all the pistons and rods assembled. Ring packs are already loaded on them. And they're all ready to go in the block. This engine is going to get a power adder. So when you do a power adder, you have to gap the rings accordingly. And I have gapped these rings in such a way that she may give up a hair naturally aspirated, but when you throw the giggle juice to her, it's gonna live. I mark every bolt as I torque it. So I know I've been there. And I always have what it looks like an X mark. Well, it kind of is. But I mark them one way because I always do 2 rounds. First round, I'll mark them to know I went through them all. Second round, I'll mark them to know I went through them all. Now, what I will do is I'll let that sit for 20, 30 minutes. And then I'll go back with a torque wrench and double check every one of them again. I have seen weird things happen with engines. I'm not saying anybody else has to do this. I'm not saying it even matters if you do. It's just an extra step that I take because I've seen weird things. I went back and checked them and, you know, things happen. Let's just say that. And so I always double check everything. Every bolt that gets torqued, once it's torqued and marked, every bolt gets rechecked again before it gets handed over to anybody just to make sure. So it's just one of the things I do. And you put a wrench on for another, you can turn it with one finger. That's what you want. Just a hair resistance, nothing. It's smart to check the rolling resistance, I guess is a good way to put it. When you're putting the motor together, it's smart to check that as you go. I will check it constantly. And if at any time you feel like something doesn't feel right, stop. Address the last thing you've done. That way you know exactly where to look. Now, naturally, it's going to get to where it requires just a little more effort with each part you put on because you're adding stuff to it. But you know if it goes from turning fairly easy with nothing fighting against you to where you got a crank on it all of a sudden, like from one piston to the next or whatever the case may be. You can tell when something changes and check the last thing you've done, something will be off. For me, when I'm putting the pistons in, I've got 2 in here, third one. I just go in order. I go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 from front to back. Some people do it differently. That's just how I do it. Pistons are directional and so are rods. If you look at the rod, there's a chamfer on one end. The other end, the bearing goes right up to the edge of the rod. There's a chamfer. The chamfer end of the rod matches the chamfer end of the crank. If the camera will focus, you can see down in there. Doesn't want to focus. Against the crank over here, there's a little chamfer. It matches that. So basically, the flat sides of the rods go together, if that makes sense. Pistons are also directional. These are 4-valve relief. It doesn't really matter on a 4-valve relief, but they do have marks on them that tell you which way is the front. So they are directional. Again, with a 4-valve relief piston, it doesn't really matter. Not in my opinion, it doesn't. There will be people that argue that. I do put them in the direction the manufacturer suggests because why try to do it different just to do it different? You know what I mean? So they ask to do it that way, so I do it that way. I don't see where the 4-valve relief matters. Domed pistons, it definitely matters because of valve clearance. 2-valve definitely matters because of valve clearance. These 4 valves, I don't think it really matters. But we put them in the way the manufacturer suggests just because, well, we paid them for their knowledge, so why not go buy it? You know what I mean? Got a couple oil galley plugs put in, no big deal. And this thing's ready to go. She is a very specific built short block, and I can't give you the details on it. I'm gonna let the person that it's going to give the details. Maybe they'll do a video on their YouTube channel about it as well. This is for somebody that's very well known, and I don't know how much they want other people to know about their business. So I will say this: the compression has been kept down a little bit, and the rings have been gapped a little wide. You can do with that information what you want to, but this one's going on a very cool project, and hopefully it's something that we get to see again in the future. I am pooped. I hope you guys have had a great day. I hope the Lord bless you today more than He did yesterday. Another FE coming to life and headed out the door, and this one's headed to Florida. it seems like they're going further and further away lately. So, we'll see y'all down the road.
I'd say it's a nut job.